Crown? Is it really popular here? Yeah. And does the monarchy ever comment on the Crown?
No, they never comment on anything at all, apart from weather. And
well, that's pretty powerful that they. All right.
Yeah, you good? Okay. So hello everyone. Welcome. Thanks for coming down. My name's Rowan Woods. I'm the Festival Series Programmer. As you know, this is our first year having our first full series programme. We were really thrilled to have the European premiere of Dopesick playing as part of that on Wednesday. And Danny Strong is the series creator and the exec producer, and we're going to just have a chat about the show. So, Danny, thanks for being here again. Do you want to tell us a little bit about sort of where the show originated, where the idea came from, why this felt like a topic you wanted to tackle?
Sure. So, where should I talk to? Should I talk to you, to the crowd? There's all these cameras. I just want to do whatever is right.
What's right for you guys?
Should I just address the audience? Okay. Because you're the ones here. Well, hey, everybody. Oh, wait, I already did that when I walked in. So this show, so in 2017, there was a New Yorker article by Patrick Radden Keefe.
My boyfriend.
Your boyfriend? And in this article, he laid out that the opioid crisis all stemmed from one company that was micromanaged by one family. And it was this really brutal expose on the Sackler family and how that they were basically responsible for the opioid crisis and how they did it. And it was a pretty shocking story because there was the lies, deception, the criminal behavior was laid out. And that blew the Sacklers up into a major news story. That's when then Nan Goldin started doing protests, bring their names off of the museums. I think there was a major one of those protests here that she did. And so a producer came to me, John Goldwyn, a really wonderful producer, and he said, do you want to write and direct a movie on the Sackler family? And this was a few months later, and I'd read the article but hadn't thought about it as a story. And I thought, well, that's really interesting. Why don't I kind of start diving into this? And there had been 2 books written about the opioid crisis, Purdue Pharma, the Sackler family. It was really laid out, and the more I read about it, the more I was stunned, shocked, could not believe the level of deception, lies, dishonesty, criminal behavior. It was like the whole thing was a long con that was meticulously manipulated by this company that was micromanaged by this family. And for years the family said, oh, we're just on the board, we're passive members, we're not even really involved in the company. And then in, 2016, 17, all their emails came out in discovery from all these lawsuits against them, and oh my God, so shocking, they were lying through their teeth. They were micromanaging this company. This was their company. The people that went down for an earlier settlement were like the second-class citizens of the company. It was not, the whole thing was a lie. And then you start to realize, oh, everything about this company and this product, how they marketed the product, it's all a lie. And it's shocking. It's just truly shocking. So then I thought, well, I got to do something with this. I don't know what. And then I thought about the movie Traffic. And I thought, oh, maybe there's a version of Traffic of the opioid crisis where you could do different stories that intertwined. So, because I thought just the Sacklers, lying rich people, that are just a bunch of assholes. I don't know, a movie maybe, but it didn't seem like there was enough story there. So then I realized there was this court case. Sorry, is this a super long answer?
No, this is
all right. Well, there was a court case where where a U.S. attorney and his prosecutors went after Purdue Pharma, and they built a great case against them, and the case settled in 2007. And I thought, oh, a case, prosecutors, that means there's an investigation. Ooh, maybe that's the spine of this piece. That's when I started to see it as a work of art. If that doesn't sound pretentious, if it does, I apologize. But as a drama, as a scripted story. And then I kept researching, and then there was this DEA investigation in 2000, 2001. Oh my gosh, another investigation. Well, then I thought, okay, there's these exciting layers to this story. that could expose their criminal behavior. And I thought, well, maybe we could be with them as we're watching them come up with these dishonest campaigns. So there's another interesting story. And then lastly, it was, well, you can't do this without doing the victims. And then the victims became this composite town I created called Finch Creek. That I had these characters that were composite characters that I saw as the archetypal victims of the crimes at Purdue Pharma. So that was where it all began, and sort of how the construction of it came.
And at what stage did Beth Macy's book come to you? Is it when you were doing all of that research?
Yeah, so this is sort of one of those unusual Hollywood stories, but not really that unusual. I had done, I don't know, a year's worth of research, had come up with the entire show, which is the show that you see, Dopesick. Pitched it to the studio, 20th, which is part of the Disney family. They bought it. We were in the process of booking meetings to go pitch it around town. And then Fox 21, another studio under the same banner under Disney, didn't know about that I was doing that. And they went and bought the book Dopesick in a bidding war. And I read about it on Deadline Hollywood. So, well, that's interesting that my own studio has a rival project against me. Like, so what are we going to do here? And so they were screwed, because it can take 6 months to 2 years to find a writer to adapt a book. It's very, I'm a producer as well, and I hire writers to do exactly that. And I've had projects where it's literally taken 2 years to find the right writer. So, and I was ready to go. So they asked if I would team up. I read the book, Dopesick. I loved the book, Dopesick, and it did something different than the other books, because at this point now there's been 4 books that have come out. And it did something different, which was that it covered the victims. It covered the people on the ground that were struggling with opioid use disorder, and all from the lies of Purdue, right? So, and then I loved her even more, Beth. And she wanted to be in the writer's room, and I thought, oh, well, there wasn't going to be a writer's room, but, she's would be great to do this with an expert, and maybe I'll hire 1 or 2 other writers, and thus we were off to the races. So Beth has been a wonderful part of the team. But yeah, it is sort of strange that, how did you adapt Dopesick? Well, I didn't really. And part of one of the things that made me want to team up with them, besides Beth and thinking, wow, this would be great to have her on board, was the title Dopesick. I thought, what a great title.
It's a great title.
And then a little bit later down the road, I got a call from someone saying, hey, they've tested the title and they don't like it. Would you change it? And I said, that's the whole point of me teaming up with them. This is a great title. Like, enough of the testing. This is a great title. And they were awesome. They were like, okay, fine. They were like, no worries. Just wanted to let you know that we tested it. So that was, that's how that came to be.
And on a more sort of granular level, I mean, there is, so, as you just outlined, there is so much material, and you've got various different storylines, various different timelines, different characters, different perspectives. How did you actually approach trying to put all of that into a sort of 8-part structure? Yeah,
it was a very complicated piece. I had, before I'd sold the show, I had outlined the whole season. Not beat by beat, but I had these broad stroke outlines, because I wanted to know in my own head that I could pull it off, and that I thought this could work before I even sold it to anyone. So I had kind of sketched it out and had sort of the season sketched out. And then it was originally at FX instead of Hulu, and they made me do a 10-page document on what the season would be. So there was so much work that had gone into it that by the time I started episode 2, I had a strong sense of how it would work. Now, that doesn't mean I didn't know it would work, because it's a complicated narrative device of having intertwining stories like this. You can say it's complicated, although, in any TV show there's intertwining stories, but normally they're all connected in some way. They're part of the same family or the same office, right? Where this is these different stories. But then to make things even harder, they took place in 3 different time periods. So now why did I do that? Well, the investigations 2002 to 2007, the Purdue storyline, I had to do the origin story of the launch of OxyContin. That's 1996. I have to show the victims. That's 1996. The DEA investigations 2000, right? So if I just did it linear, then that means the first 6 episodes would just be Purdue Pharma and the victims. Then episode 5, the DEA agent comes in. Then episode 7, the prosecutors come in. That would have been a very bad television show. It wouldn't have worked. It literally wouldn't have worked. I mean, part of what makes the show so intense is that the investigations are happening simultaneously as they're committing the crimes and as we're watching the victims. So it really was the only way that I believed the story could work, and I thought it could be pretty cool. And I'll be honest with you, I've in the last 2 days it's aired in the U.S., and I've had several writers reach out to me, friends and colleagues that have seen it, and they're all like, "How the fuck did you do that at the time? It's unbelievable." You know, it's like the thing that writers are kind of most impressed with, because there is a bit of there's some craftsmanship there, you know, like it was not easy to do. So that's been lovely.
I imagine lots of different coloured note cards in a very big board.
I wished it would have been, but there was a thing called a worldwide pandemic. So we had no writer's room, so we had to do it virtually. So there was we had bought all of the different cards, we bought all the boards, and then week 2 of the room, bam, shut down. So it was all virtual, and it was really interesting doing the room virtually. There was no board, which is fine by me because I was a screenwriter for a decade before I ever started writing television, so it's not like I need the board or I can't do this, you know. There was no board, and then I would get confused if I found that I would get confused if I wasn't taking the notes. So I ended up being the showrunner and the writer's assistant because I was taking all the notes, and it was very confusing to people. They're like, "Why are you taking the notes?" And I'm like, this isn't because I'm trying to be humble. I'm just doing it because it's just to keep all this straight in my head because it's very confusing. And everyone in the room said, "Yeah, we know you're not trying to be humble. That we get. That we get." But it was just you just go with what you got. So.
Mm-hmm. And of course, some of this stuff is still live and ongoing.
Uh-huh.
How did you navigate that in your process?
How did I navigate? Hold on. It was, the show is basically 1996 to 2007. So I wasn't worried about everything that was happening now. The only thing I was worried about was how am I going to end the show? What piece of information, because I knew that there would be some sort of catch-up for the audience to end the season in some way, whether it's the chyrons you see or something else, and I decided I didn't want to do the chyrons because I wanted to do something that felt maybe a little more creative, but I'm not going to tell you because it hasn't aired yet. But by the way, it's not this most genius thing I did, but it was just something that was a little more interesting, I thought, to do that. But it was, so where is that going to end? And the ending came 3 weeks ago with the bankruptcy ruling. So that's how the season ends with that piece of information, which in many ways might be the end of the story. I hope not. I do hope there's a criminal investigation into the Sackler family, because it's I can't believe that Richard Sackler hasn't been charged for crimes. And it's so funny, you say the Sackler family, and it's more like 6 people that really did this, and 3 of them are no longer with us. So there's maybe 3 people that are living that are really responsible for this. But Richard Sackler was the godfather of OxyContin. He's really the main person.
But one of the things I love about the show is, of course, you focus on the Sacklers, but it's not a case of just a few bad apples caused this thing. Like, these are deep systemic problems as well. And I love the way that the show really. You mean with the U.S. government? Absolutely.
Yeah. So, well, and also in our show, it ends with the 2007 settlement the case that these prosecutors that we follow put together, and they put an incredible case together, and they showed their criminal behavior, and they wanted to charge key executives with felonies, and then that didn't happen. And that not happening is kind of how Purdue Pharma got away with it in this phase, right? Like, the law was on to them, and they started a case, and then it slipped away, and how it slipped away is completely fascinating, and it ties into the bigger story that you just mentioned, which is moneyed influence at the highest levels of the U.S. government. In some ways, it's like it's legal bribery, you know, and there's this systemic problem we have in the U.S. called the revolving door, which is that people in government agencies that regulate private industry, they leave the government and they immediately go get a job working for the company that they were just regulating. And the problem with that is it creates a conflict of interest that they may not properly regulate them because they are maybe seeking a job. So I'm going to give you a spoiler from the first episode. But one of the reasons why the entire opioid crisis happened was because the FDA granted Purdue Pharma this very unusual wording on the warning label of OxyContin, which said, and I'm not even going to say verbatim because it's too confused, it doesn't even make sense, to be honest with you, but it basically said that the drug, OxyContin, was less addictive than other opioids. And so that wording was the primary sales tool for sales reps when they met with doctors. It was, the FDA has a warning label that says it's less addictive. This is a breakthrough in pain management, right? Well, it was not less addictive. It was just as addictive. It's pure heroin in a pill, right? In some cases, it's more addictive because it's pure oxycodone as opposed to Vicodin, which is cut with aspirin or Tylenol and, you know, Lortab, these other drugs, they're cut with something else. Not OxyContin, it's pure oxycodone. It's pure opium, right? So the guy that approved the warning label at the FDA, he approves the label. 18 months later, he goes to work for Purdue Pharma at 5 times the salary, right? So it is the most sort of like, you know, biggest example of the corruption of the revolving door. And the prosecutors opened a case on him. I mean, the appearance of corruption is so staggering with what his actions were. So that's literally, we find that out in episode 1. And that's just the beginning of the lies and the corruption and the deceit. But so sorry, I kind of ruined the season 1.
There's plenty more episodes.
Plenty more episodes.
Now, and of course, this isn't the first time that you've focused on real people in your writing. You sort of recount Game Change. How do you, as a writer, find the balance between sort of telling us what's true and getting at some sort of broader, sort of dramatic truth that sort of is more the spirit of what's true?
Yeah, well, so I won't pursue a true life story into a scripted movie or limited series unless there's so much great stuff there that the truth will carry the piece, right? So it's like if you have to make up a bunch of stuff in order for the dynamic moments of the story to work, just do something else, you know? Or do something that's from 200 years ago that hopefully no one will call you on, you know? Or it doesn't even matter that you're making stuff up, right? But it's if you have to make up the things that are most important in the story, then I think it's irresponsible and immoral to do that. In the case of the dramatization that occurs, well, that dramatization is used as a conduit to get true facts out. So the stuff that you're making up is historically insignificant. It's not unfair to anyone. Maybe you're tweaking things for drama to make it compelling and powerful or funny or whatever you're going for. But at the end of the day, all of that is in service of getting the truth out. And if getting the truth out isn't good enough, then work on something else. Because you know you're just you're just a liar. You know, I think that. I mean, there's 2 kind of litmus tests I have. One which is that HBO, because the first 2 of these I did were for HBO, and the lawyer from HBO in 2 minutes kind of gave me a principle that guided me. If you're showing someone do something negative or that makes them look bad, it has to be true. If you're showing someone do something positive or neutral, it doesn't necessarily have to be true. You know, it's anything you do in a negative light has to be true. And then the other principle is my own principle, which is I call the 10-year-old Danny principle, which is if you're 10 years old and you find out that this moment is untrue and you're bummed, then maybe it doesn't work. You know, it's like, have you ever seen something and you're like, that's untrue? Oh, really? Oh, but that was such a big part of the story, you know? So that's the other kind of thing that guides me, are those two. But and then a lot of other things too, like, you know, fear, slander, and libel. But whatever. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that.
I was going to say, there must have been lots of loopholes to jump through. So what kind of, you know, you've talked a little bit about, you know, why you wanted to make this show, but when people sort of watch it, I know when we spoke the other day at the premiere, you talked about wanting to sort of give the Sacklers the sort of court case that they'd never had. What do you want people to take away from this when they watch it?
Yeah, there's two main things I want people to take away. I wanted to give the Sackler family and Purdue Pharma the trial that they never got, because they haven't had a trial. They've had settlements in which they've pled guilty, the company's pled guilty to 3 felonies and $9 billion in fines. I mean, that's a guilty-ass company, huh? You know, and the first time they pled guilty, it was to lying. Now in America, everyone lies. So how badly do you have to lie that you have to plead guilty to a federal charge of lying? I mean, that's pretty profound. So one is to lay out their crimes for the country so that there is this historical record document of what exactly Purdue Pharma did, so that the victims of Purdue that are still alive and the family members of the victims know what happened. And not only that, but what I've seen on Twitter in the last 2 days is they're not just ecstatic that their family members know what happened, but it's so that the country knows what happened to them. You know, I'm seeing like people are going to know what happened to me now. You know, I took a pill for an injury and I lost 6 years of my life to addiction, because you can become addicted. OxyContin was so powerful, you could become addicted to it in 3 days. 3 days, your brain chemistry is altered, and you will do anything in your power to get your next fix, because if you don't get it, you think you're going to die. You're in so much pain. That condition is called being dopesick. And so that's literally, and it can take 2 years for your brain chemistry to be rewired back to normal. And that's after you stop taking the drug, right? So that's why people are not able to stop, because it actually takes 2 years to be able to fully recover if your frontal lobe has been damaged enough. And I think that amount of damage can happen in, you know, months, just a few months. But so that's one. The other thing is that there are actually really effective treatments for opioid use disorder. Buprenorphine, which is known as Suboxone. It's a prescription that you take daily, and it kills the withdrawals and the symptoms. Now it is a narcotic, but it's a much tamer doctor-prescribed narcotic that enables you to essentially have a normal life. Now, some people can't get off Suboxone and they have to take it for the rest of their lives, which I think is better than being a heroin addict, you know, living under a bridge trying not to get dopesick, right? Although some people can get off Suboxone. Either way, it's incredibly effective, but it's highly stigmatized, because there are people in the recovery community that say, oh, you're just replacing one drug for another. And only 12% of the people that need Suboxone actually take it. So it's like saying 12% of people that need insulin for their diabetes are actually getting insulin. Well, that's terrifying, right? And this, so I'm hoping, and this is a major thing of what Beth Macy's goal of the show was to destigmatize Suboxone, because it's such an effective treatment, and one of the only treatments. Look, if you can stop taking OxyContin or fentanyl or heroin without Suboxone, fantastic. You know, if you can control your diabetes through diet and exercise and not take insulin every day, great, do that. You know, but if you can't, then this is an incredible solution. And if we could double the amount of people that are getting it from the show, that's incredible. But if we could get that number from 12% to 70%, that could turn the tide on the opioid crisis, which is still flourishing. So that's the other goal.
Mm. And the great Barry Levinson directs your first 2 episodes. How did you and Barry work together to sort of create the look and feel of the show?
Yeah, do you all know Barry Levinson? Have you guys heard of him? A lot of people haven't heard of Barry. They're younger. which is crazy because when I was, a teenager into my 20s, I wasn't in film school, but I cheated my way into film school as I was in the theater school. And I would say he was one of the heroes, filmmakers of the 80s and the 90s and early aughts. He's 79 now, but he's directed all of these iconic classics: The Natural, Avalon, Rain Man, Oscar winner, Diner, Wag the Dog. It's just it's an unbelievable filmography. And in the last 10 years, he's been directing these HBO movies that are terrific. It's so inspiring. You can see directors like Barry and Mike Nichols and Clint Eastwood and Scorsese and Spielberg, who are in their 80s and Clint Eastwood's 91. They can still do it at the highest level. It's pretty inspiring to see that. And so I was so lucky that he wanted to direct the pilot and episode 2. I spent basically 4 months attached to his waist with the two of us, doing all this stuff together, and it was the greatest film school I could have ever asked for. I direct the last 2 episodes of the season, so to get to spend 4 months with Barry before I went to direct my 2 episodes was something I'll always be grateful for. And we talked everything out together. As far as the look goes, it was every meeting with the production designer and the cinematographer we would do together, and on those issues, I would let Barry lead and then chime in, and it would be a discussion. But the cinematographer, this guy Checo Varese, really talented, knew exactly what he was doing. Our production designer did Heat and all the Spider-Man movies. I mean, it was amazing we got him to do a limited series, one of his first TV jobs. So it was a real A-team group of people.
And speaking of, Michael Keaton, one of your amazing ensemble cast, how did you get him on board? That's a huge coup, having him doing TV.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. So the simple answer is we offered him the part, and he said yes. That's what happened. I never thought he would do it because he hadn't done TV in 15 years. Since he's resurfaced as this sort of one of the great dramatic actors. And he also was an ensemble show. He's not the lead. There is no lead. Although he's kind of the main character, but it's an ensemble. And I thought, well, Michael Keaton's first time he's going to do television, he's going to be in an ensemble. But it was our first, we hadn't offered any roles to anyone. So when you're making offers to actors, if you've been greenlit and you're making offers to actors, you don't want to get too many passes. Because if you start racking up a lot of passes, the people that are financing it, they start to get nervous. Like, oh, talent doesn't want to do this? Is there something wrong with this? So someone like Michael Keaton, I would only make that kind of offer maybe twice. And then I'd get scared and then go to a tier of actor that's not as famous and as in demand as him. Or unless I would talk it out with Hulu and say, I don't want to get any more passes, and they'd say, we don't care about that. Just make one, that. Like you can have that conversation, right? But then I wouldn't fully believe them. I'd be like, yeah, but you get that third pass, and are they gonna start freaking out? So, but it was the first offer, so it was like, okay, let's just try it. And then he wanted to meet with me, which was amazing for me because he's another childhood hero. I grew up on his comedies when I was a kid. And he was literally one of my favorite actors. It was Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson were my 2 favorite actors when I was 8 years old. Same height as I am now. It's crazy, but and so it was just So it was really thrilling. A, just to meet with him, and then B, and then he said yes.
And he actually has a personal connection to this.
Yeah, which I didn't know, which is his nephew passed away from a fentanyl overdose. So this story was really personal to him. So. I'll tell you this because he's already said this publicly, but I met with him, and it went good. He didn't say yes on the phone call, but he was clearly interested. And then I got a call that he wants a document of his arc for the rest of the season. So I wrote a 5-page document of what happens to the character, and then I sent it off. And then a week later, he said he was in. Great. So then he gets episode 4, which is a very big turn for the character that wildly affects the rest of the season. And he called me, and he said, "What? This is crazy. What?" And I said, Michael, it's in the document. He said, well, I didn't read it. He's like, this is going to be a lot of work. And I said, yeah, but it's going to be great. It's going to be great. He was like, okay, Yeah, so anyways, so that's how we got Michael Keaton. So, but now at this point, right, I've got this show. It's been greenlit. I've got Barry Levinson, legend, Michael Keaton, legend. Like, now we're good, All that tension of, then we were off to the races, and then everyone wants to be in the show now. So it's awesome, because it doesn't always go that way, Doesn't always go that way.
I know you've got to get off to another appointment, so I'm just...
Don't worry about it, I got another hour, 2 hours. Let's start with my childhood. I'm 4 years old. No, anyways, okay, go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to ask one more question, and that's how, when you're working with amazing actors like Michael Keaton, how does your background as an actor sort of impact the way you write for these people?
Well, I've already written it. So my background as an actor is so funny, because when my first 2 movies were these political dramas that I mentioned already, and I got attacked a lot by people that were trying to discredit the pieces, which were really, incendiary pieces, very truthful, and people didn't like the truth being told in a mainstream way. So, by the way, it was a small group of people, but they would attack it, and they would always start the attack with, the actor from Buffy the Vampire Slayer wrote this movie. And then sometimes it would be the actor from Gilmore Girls, wrote, So it was like the attack line, sort of in the early part of my career, which, by the way, never bothered me. My favorite was when someone attacked me and said, the actor from Buffy and the Vampire Slayers. I was like, I am one of those Slayers. But so it was, but the truth is that my background as an actor, which goes a little bit beyond those 2 shows, is my secret weapon as a writer, director, producer. It's everything. It's literally everything. And the actors love it, because I write the scenes to be played, because I've spent 30 years playing scenes as an actor. So it's literally, and if you're not an actor and you're a writer, I recommend taking some acting classes. A, it might be fun, and B, who knows what you'll learn just from playing scenes, as far as writing them. So it's literally my biggest asset in everything else I do, is that my background's that.
And so Dopesick comes to Disney Plus in the UK on the 12th of November. And what's next for you?
I'd like a nap. I've got a full slate. I have a TV company now, so I'm producing lots of things that I'm not writing. So I want to focus on those for a little bit and try and get some shows made that I'm not writing, so that I can be a non-writing EP, like my non-writing EPs, which means someone else does all the work, and then you step in a little bit and take credit for all their work. It's kind of amazing. That's just an amazing thing.
You collect the Emmys.
Yeah. I've seen that happen, and I'm like, and by the way, I like my non-writing producers. They've been very helpful, but it's like the difference between that and that, as far as just hours in a day, is kind of staggering. So I'm like, well, that's a good gig. Let me try that. So I have a number of projects that I'm producing on that front. I have a couple movies I'm going to write, and then I've got a few TV show ideas and some. I love limited series. I think this is the coolest form as an audience member and as a writer to work on. I mean, it's just to get 8 hours to do it as opposed to 2 is really great. So I'd like to do another one of those too.
I'm going to push you slightly.
Okay.
I've heard you're interested in doing something on Trump.
Yeah. Where'd you hear that?
I read it online.
I know. It's so interesting. Sure. I mean, who wouldn't want to do something on Trump?
I'd watch it.
Yeah, so me and Jay Roach, the guy who did the first 2 political films, who directed them, who's maybe the greatest guy ever, we've been trying to figure out a Trump project for many years. And it's just the really challenge of doing a Trump project is every day during that presidency and during that campaign, every day with him made the previous day irrelevant, because it was so chaotic, right? And it was as if, I remember there was this book, Fire and Fury, that came out that was really entertaining to read, and Jay wanted to do that, and I think he optioned it, and I said, and so I read it right away, and I loved it, And I said, yeah, but it was irrelevant the day after it came out because so much crazy shit happened the day it came out. That happened every day of the Trump administration. And I don't want to do something unless I could do something that has something, I don't know if profound is the word to say, but something to say about the subject matter that is thematic, that is much bigger than the events themselves. If it's just doing the events, well, that's a documentary or that's a news story even. Not even really a documentary, that's more of a news story, the events, right? So my whole thing is what does this say? What's a theme, an idea that is much bigger that you want to say? And sometimes you can't go do that right away. You need time away from it. You need reflection, I remember that on the Mueller investigation, we were following that, and we're like, we're going to do the Mueller investigation, right? So then the Mueller investigation comes out, and it's a weird, he's not really exonerated, but they said he is, but not on this part, but this part too now, And I thought, well, maybe there's still something here, that has something profound to say. And then literally the next day, he commits impeachable crimes, I mean, it was like, and it's impeached. So who cares about that? He's now been impeached, with Ukraine. So, and that's the Donald Trump story, right? It's just how do you keep up with it? And that's actually part of his, little bit of his success, which isn't intentional, is that there's so much insanity. It's hard to kind of nail him on something because it's too much stuff happening. Yeah, I say it with love.
Well, watch this space. Danny, thank you. That was really, really great. And I think we're being told, yes, that's it.
Bye, everyone. Thanks. Pleasure. You can buy your Hulu mask or
Disney Plus.
Disney Plus mask. That's right. You guys don't have Hulu here. No.
No. Disney Plus, 12th of November.